Good morning, aviators, and welcome to Mission 4 of the Gunthrek Academy FA-18 Hornet training campaign. This lesson talks about GPS entry and navigation as well as how to use it, or setting it up for munitions, so air-to-ground weapons, GPS weapons. So let's go talk about how to actually put the GPS coordinates in, where to find them on the knee board, and different variations in how you can actually put in the waypoints for different reasons. And then on the very end of the lesson, it's going to practice a carrier one, or correction, case one carrier landing. Let's jump right into it.
Now that you know how to take off and land safely, we need to learn how to get where we're going in between. Most real-world missions will have preloaded waypoints to guide you, but for the remainder of this section of the course, we're going to practice our data entry skills by manually entering waypoints into the navigation system. This serves a twofold purpose. First, it forces us to become familiar with the data entry process and various GPS coordinate formats, and second, it gets us ready for the true purpose of GPS data entry, precision bombing.
That makes sense.
Of course, we're not quite ready to start dropping bombs just yet, so we'll have to settle for flying between waypoints. For this afternoon's flight, we're going to go visit the ground attack training range so you can become familiar with the area. We're obviously not going to get much accomplished cold and dark, so go ahead and get the aircraft started up and we'll learn how to enter waypoints.
Okay, you've already seen me do the cold start several times before, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, back after the cold start and parking brake released.
Okay, let's get started with some data entry. I find that it's easiest to use the right MDI for data entry because all
right
the
here.
buttons you'll use the most are located close together, but it's up to you. Do what you're most comfortable with.
Yeah, I can see
Also,
that.
you should be getting pretty familiar with the cockpit by this point, so I won't be hand-holding you with individual button presses anymore. You'll remember where everything is a lot better if you have to look for it yourself. In
That's
order
true.
to let me
That's
know that you've moved on to the next
element
step,
of learning.
I'll ask you to press the IP push button in the top left of the UFC panel to signal me that you've completed the last instruction provided and I can move on to the next step. Let's test that out now by pressing the IP button.
IP.
Perfect. The first thing we need to do is get to the data page of the HSI. Go ahead and open up the HSI on one of the MDIs and then press the push button for data.
Okay. HSI and the data button. And IP continue.
This is where most of the work is going to be done today. As you can see, there are a set of coordinates already listed on the screen. This is the current location of the aircraft, which is listed as waypoint 0 by default. Although it isn't strictly required, we're going to go ahead and get into the habit of adding waypoints to sequence 1 prior to entering the actual coordinates. This way we won't forget to do it later, which would make coupling the autopilot to the navigation impossible. Let's start by pressing the SEQ-UFC push button, then on the UFC menu press the INS push button, enter a value of 1 on the number pad, then press the enter key.
Okay, so there's two UFC buttons. There's the top one, and then there's sequence UFC. That's the one you want. You want sequence UNC. You want to press INS 1, enter. You should see a 0-1 here. Okay, and IP to continue.
Alright, now that we've added waypoint 1 to the sequence, we need to actually put coordinates in. There are 4 types of coordinate systems we'll be learning today: lat long normal, lat long precise, lat long decimal, and finally MGRS.
That one sucks.
The first of these is the simplest, but also the least accurate. Lat long normal is great for general navigation waypoints that don't require pinpoint precision. They consist of a simple 6-digit number that provides latitude and longitude in values of degrees, minutes, and seconds.
Yep.
For example, our first waypoint is North 41 40 43 East 45 29 06 2,451 feet. The first letter of each line indicates the hemisphere of that 6-digit coordinate. We're in the north and east hemispheres, or northeast hemisphere. The first pair of numbers tells you what degree of latitude or longitude you're at. The next pair are the minutes and the last pair are seconds.
That's just how it works.
What does that mean to you in the cockpit? Not much, honestly, but that's how maps work. The last line is the elevation at those coordinates in feet, which isn't really required for navigation, but is critical when dropping ordnance for precision strikes, so we're going to get in the habit of entering that information every time we deal with GPS.
Even if using the lantern, you got to put the elevation in here. So just to kind of give a little bit more detail, north, that's the hemisphere, 41 degrees of latitude. Think of it that's the whole number, and then you got your hundredths number, that's the minutes, and then the seconds is like the thousandth. That's a rough, not perfect analogy, but if that helps you understand it better, great. You can also put it in meters if you want, but most often not in feet.
The aircraft likely started in decimal mode, so we're going to have to switch that before entering the code. Press the A-C button to bring up the configuration menu. Then if you see lat long decimal in the bottom right, press it so it changes to lat long seconds.
Okay, I'm going to do that.
Then go back to the waypoint screen.
Okay, lat long decimal.
To enter the first waypoint,
lat long
first
second.
make sure you're on the correct waypoint by pressing the up and down arrows to select waypoint 1, then press the UFC push button. Move over to the UFC menu and press the POSN button. To enter the coordinates,
They need to break
you
this
first
up.
need to tell the UFC which hemisphere you're entering, and the 2, 4, 6, and 8 buttons have direction indicators on them that you press before entering the 6-digit coordinates. So to enter the first line, you press 2 for north, then type out 414053 and press the enter key.
Okay, this is honestly the first gripe I've had in the first 4 missions. They need to break that up into 3 separate parts. Okay, so what he's talking about here, it puts you in decimal mode. So we were on this page, you go to aircraft, lat long, down here at the bottom right, it's in decimal mode. For the first example, he wants to use seconds, so you want to make sure seconds are used, because that's seconds up top instead of decimal. Okay, so seconds. Then go back to waypoint. That's where you should have put the first break. Enter the first waypoint using the up-down arrows on the side here. We're now on waypoint 1, which we entered on the UFC earlier when we entered it after the INS. Okay, then we need to push UFC position. Then the position will be north 414053. Got degrees, minutes, second, enter. Okay, that's the first line for north.
Now press 6 for east and enter the appropriate 6 digits for that coordinate, 452906, and press enter.
Okay, so I push 6 for east, 4, 5, 2, 0. Oh, I made a mistake. We can clear that. East, 4, 5, 2, 9, 0, 6. 25 degrees, 29 minutes, 6 seconds. Enter. Okay.
Lastly, enter the elevation information by pressing the ELEV button, typing in the value provided, 2451, verifying that you're using the correct unit of measurement, feet, and pressing enter to store the waypoint.
Okay, we're going to click elevation. We're in feet, so we just enter 2451, enter. And waypoint 1 is done.
Not too complicated, but also not very useful for anything but navigation. If we're going to drop bombs using GPS, we're going to need something quite a bit more precise, and this is where the first of the precise modes comes in. To use this, we need to put the system in the correct mode by pressing the precise push button at the bottom of the display.
Okay. So, we press this precise mode, it boxes it. Then we're going to go to the next step.
As you can see, the simpler coordinates we were looking at a minute ago just got a bit more complex, but for a good reason. This allows us to get pinpoint accuracy by splitting up the normal coordinates, which cover a much larger area, into smaller chunks by using decimals. The process for entering these is exactly the same as before, except for one additional step, but before we can get to that we need to remember to add waypoint 2 as part of the sequence, so press SEQUFC INS 2, enter.
This is
Then be
another one
sure
that,
to advance the system to waypoint 2 with the up arrow.
this is another one that could break into 3 parts.
Once that's done, refer to the mission briefing in the menu or the mission card in your kneeboard to get the coordinates for waypoint 2. Then go ahead and press the UFC button and enter the part of the north coordinate you know how to do, everything before the decimal point, and press enter.
Okay, so we'll re-enter waypoint 2, or we'll enter waypoint 2. Let's pull up the kneeboard first. Okay, this is what he's talking about. He's talking, look at your mission briefing in the kneeboard. We're going to be looking waypoint 2. There's a decimal in this one, so we'll stop after we get the decimal. So, first thing we need to do is sequence UFC, INS 2, enter, adds to the sequence, put it on the right sequence number, I'm sorry, on the waypoint number, waypoint 2, look good, then UFC, position, and just like we did 2 for north, 415210, enter. And we're going to push the IP button, but notice it brings up the 100th column.
All that's left now is the remaining decimal. For more precise modes like this, which include decimal space, the decimal values are entered on a separate screen from the main coordinates. So for this example, we typed in N415210 and pressed the enter key, which brought up the HDTH page. Simply type in 90 and press enter again to complete the entry. An easy way to remember this is to replace the enter with dot or decimal in your head while typing the coordinate out. The waypoint display should now show the full coordinate information for the first line, but still 0 for the second. Go ahead and type in the second coordinate the same way as you did the first, then be sure to add the elevation information in the correct unit of measurement.
Okay, now here's my second gripe. That took so long to explain right there, we have to completely re-enter the number. So we gotta go UFC position, again looking at waypoint 2 down here, north 415210, enter, or as he says, think in your mind, decimal. We're in the 100th now. What's behind that decimal? 90, enter. Perfect. Now we gotta go the second part of it, east 452311, decimal 53. Then we got to put the elevation, which is 3202 feet. So elevation in feet, 3202. Enter. Perfect. Then push the IP button.
If you entered everything correctly, your readout should now be N4252 10.90 E4523 11.53 5408 feet. If it isn't, give it another shot by repeating the steps and paying a little more attention to detail.
Well, that block said something different than here. So 40, let me see what the mission briefing says. No, 41. Okay, so he's telling us to pay more attention, but he's the one who should have paid more attention. Okay, whatever. We entered it right.
As before, let's add waypoint 3 to the sequence, then advance to waypoint 3 with the up arrow. Once that's done, switch back to the AC page and toggle back to lat long decimal so we can try that version.
Okay. So, waypoint 3, sequence UFC, INS 3, enter, adds it to the sequence, select the waypoint, gonna go to aircraft, lat long decimal, then back to waypoint. It's gonna be a little bit different format.
This works pretty much the same way, except that it's a bit shorter and has more digits behind the decimal. Be advised that any single number in what is supposed to be a pair of digits should be entered with a 0 before it, so in this case you should be typing in north 4206 and then enter.
Okay, so we're looking at waypoint 3. North. Oops. Let's try this. UFC, we're on waypoint 3. Position north 4206. Enter. Thousandths 436. There it is, 4206, 436. Oh, I skipped a step, sorry.
And as before, enter the decimal portion. This time it's 3 digits instead of just 2. Once that's done, repeat the process for the east coordinate, then enter the elevation as usual.
Okay, so I skipped half a step there. Or I skipped ahead half a step, but we'll go enter the east portion of waypoint 3, 40, east 45, 05, enter, which is decimal 294, enter. Boom, matches our waypoint 3, an elevation of 3202. I messed up the last waypoint, I just realized, but we'll fix that. 3202, enter. Let's go back to waypoint 2 to fix my mistake. Should be, you see, elevation 5408. 5408, enter. Okay, that's fixed, no problem. We'll go back to waypoint 3. It's still 3202 like it should be. Okay, let's click the IP button.
Okay, now for the weird one. MGRS uses a grid system to set coordinates, and it has a unique user interface to make it work. Get waypoint 4 set up as part of the sequence and advance to waypoint 4 so we can try this out.
Okay, sequence UFC, INS 4, enter, add it to the sequence, select the waypoint, and then he'll explain the complicated process. It's not too complicated, it doesn't make much sense.
Press the UFC push button on the MDI, then press the grid option from the UFC menu. This will bring up a screen with, of all things, a big grid.
See, I did that. I
At the center of this
grid.
display will be the grid where your aircraft is located. You can navigate this screen by using the direction push buttons to find the desired grid square. We're looking for grid square MM, which is where our aircraft is already located, so we don't need to move it.
Actually, the aircraft's on November Mike instead of Mike. So I'm just use your TDC to move it over to Mike, but I'm gonna click this button.
Using the throttle control designator, either
TDC.
using the appropriate keybinds or the controls on your stick, move the cursor on the display until it's over the MM square, then press the TDC select button. Once you're back on the coordinate screen, type out the 10-digit coordinates provided and press enter. Ignore the space between the 5-digit blocks. They're placed there for readability. You enter all 10 digits on the same screen. Note that if you're unable to enter all 10 digits, the system is not in precise mode. Be sure that's boxed before entering the coordinates.
Okay, we're in precise mode. The space he's talking about is if you go to the mission briefing, right here, 5, space 5, don't put a space, just write it all. In the notepad, or the kneeboard, it's correct. So, we're going to, let's see here. I believe it's just this, 870 49 29 312, enter. Boom, 87049239112. Okay, IP.
Your display should now read as follows. North 4148.9349, East 4450.6444, 38 TMM 87049293120 feet. Go ahead and enter the elevation information as usual, and this waypoint is finished.
1933, look at waypoint 4, enter. It's in. Alright, IP.
Almost ready to fly now. We need one more waypoint to get us back to the airfield, and you're going to enter that one in all by yourself. You can find the information in the mission briefing or kneeboard. I will give you a few hints, though. Remember sequencing. Which waypoint is this? Is precise required for this format? Which lat long setting on the AC page is required for this format?
Okay, so let's put waypoint 5 in the sequence. So sequence UFC, INS 5. It's there. We're on 5. Okay, it's north 413814.68. So that's not decimal, but it is precise. So north, correction, UFC, need to click UFC, position, north, 413,814, enter, point, 68, enter. That looks good. East, 450108 decimal 36, elevation 1524, enter. Alright, 4138 checks, 14.68 looks good, and then east 45010836 looks good, elevation 1524. That's it. Alright, gonna put my IR back on. Let's tap IP.
Okay, hopefully you got that right. We'll find out if you make it back to the airfield without getting lost. Press the HSI push button to go back to the HSI, then be sure to box the waypoint button, set waypoint 1 as the active, and activate sequence 1. Once that's done, go ahead and taxi to the active runway and take off. Climb to an altitude of 10,000 feet and maintain a speed no greater than 350 knots. After that, it's up to you to get yourself back to the airfield.
Okay.
Good luck.
Alright. So, press... Oh, I hate how that message disappeared. So, it's HSI, sequence... Okay, there we go. There's the sequence. And the active waypoint is 1. Auto. Oh, waypoint. Okay. So it's a left turn after departure out of here. So let's contact ATC as a formality.
Colt 1, request startup.
Okay.
Colt 1, Vazani, cleared for startup. Colt 1, request taxi to runway.
I'm going to bring the scale down on the HSI. I'm going to leave that up there. Let's go FCS down here. I'll double check to make sure I did that. That looks good. Oh, HUD, that's what I want. Okay. Taxi lights on. I did it during my pre-flight steps. Okay, get a taxi. Increasing throttle here. Making a right turn to runway 13 as instructed. And his instructions were to climb to 10,000 feet, no more than 350 knots. We'll see if I actually comply with that speed restriction. Alright, let's, again, close with hold short sign, request takeoff.
Colt 1, request takeoff. Colt 1,
There we go.
you are cleared for takeoff when ready. Climb 300 at QFE 28.34.
Alright, clear for takeoff. Joining the center line. Alright. Let's do hold brakes. Power. It's a full military power. Looking for 99%. There it is. There's 100. Release brakes, full afterburner. Ooh, a little wobbly. 80 knots. Possible steering off. Pull back to 7.0 AOA. We're up. Landing, positive rate. Landing gear up. Flaps up. We're going to intercept 350 knots. So I'm going to pitch down just a little bit. Alright, coming out of burner. There we go. We caught 350 knots. A little bit slow now, bringing the nose down just a hair. Going towards waypoint 1, which is the tick mark at the very top of the screen. Overshot just a hair. Alright, a little fast. Pitching up will slow down. I'll level off. I'll bring the throttle back a little bit too. There we go. Okay, coming up on 10,000, bringing the nose down. A little fast, slowing up. Wow, that worked pretty well. Let's go autopilot. Oh, nope, almost to 10,000. And barrel altitude selected. Alright, couple. Actually, let's decouple it. Let's go auto, then couple. Shoot, it's going to waypoint 0. So waypoint 1, that's what we want. A little fast now, slowing down, reducing power. It's headed to waypoint 1. Alright, there it goes. If we're in auto and coupled, it'll automatically start turning and sequence to waypoint 2, which sure enough, there we are. 350 knots. Almost 10,000.
Welcome to the training area. You're going to spend quite a few lessons over here practicing your air-to-ground skills.
Oh, nice.
So take a look around and get familiar with the landscape. Waypoints 2 and 3 will take us straight over the primary range. Then we'll head toward waypoint 4 to line up with the runway at Vaziani.
Okay, very good. We did not get lost. We entered it correctly. Okay, up there I see is the training range past the hill. Just a bunch of flat land and nothing. Alright, 3 miles. Slowing down a little bit for the turn, but I bet about a mile and a half.
This marks the eastern boundary of the active range.
Okay.
We'll cross directly overhead and then turn south toward the airfield.
See, here we go. Start the turn. 3, 2, 1. There we go. Almost right overhead. Very nice. Okay, so all this is the training area for munitions. Not a whole lot of houses, so that's good. Alright. I'm gonna look up the fuel. Yeah, we're too heavy to come in and land anyway, so I'm gonna go full afterburner. And I will see you at waypoint 3. Alright, coming up on waypoint 3, I bet it's going to start turning here in about 3.5 miles. I'm going to slow down just to help it. So we're going pretty fast. There we go. There's the left turn.
And that's the range. Bet you're looking forward to dropping some ordnance. While we head back to the airfield, let's talk about the full case 1 recovery procedure.
Okay.
What we practiced this morning was the bolter/wave-off procedure for landing on the carrier, which is actually part of the tail end of the Case 1 recovery when a pilot doesn't make the landing.
Earlier.
We did it that way because it allowed you to practice the hardest part of the pattern over and over without having to leave the airfield area and come back. While you'll likely be doing wave-offs and bolters a lot once we do it for real, we need to learn the proper procedure to execute a carrier landing. For the remainder of this course, forget that you ever heard the words straight in landing. The last part of an approach to the carrier requires you to perform an initial pass to the right of the ship to confirm the deck isn't fouled before conducting your braking turn to the left and entering the downwind. We're going to simulate that for every landing from now on so that it's second nature by the time we relocate to the Stennis for carrier quals.
Okay.
Once we reach waypoint 4 and begin our descent toward the runway, we'll do a quick rundown of the procedure and you'll give it a shot as we go in for the landing.
Okay. I slowed down because I thought it was going to be a little bit longer, but I've got this pulled up for when he's ready to talk about it. Alright. Full afterburner. I think we're still heavy coming in land. Yeah, we're pretty heavy. So instead of just dumping fuel, I'll get us there quicker. And I'll see you at waypoint 4. Alright, coming up closer to waypoint 4. Oh, I see the runway out there, 11 o'clock.
Let's quickly go over the procedure for the Case 1 recovery, as it isn't very different from what you practiced this morning. As you approach the airfield, slow and maintain 350 knots, descend to 800 feet AGL and line yourself to the right of the runway far enough that you can look down and verify that the runway is clear.
Okay.
After that, it's pretty much the same as what you did earlier. Once you're past the runway and begin your turn, allow yourself to descend down to about 600 feet and then do what you did before. Don't forget to switch back to the radar altimeter to get your AGL altitude.
Oh, good thinking.
Get us on the ground and back
Radar
to parking spot 1, then shut down the aircraft and we'll be done for the day.
Alright. Zalani inbound
Colt
just for
1,
formality.
inbound.
Alright, autopod disconnect.
Colt 1, Lozani, fly heading 104, 40, QFE 28.34, runway 13, to pattern altitude.
Alright, coming in here. Landing light on. It's a field landing. Anti-skid is on. Hook is up. We go through the checklist. Still slightly heavy, but we'll deal with it.
Colt 1, cleared for visual, contact tower.
Alright, so we're going to line up to the right of our simulated carrier. About 350 knots, that's looking good. Eventually I think the radar altimeter will start working here. Oh, I know why. Huh, that's my fault. I never got it on earlier, so that's my bad. Alright, correcting back to 800 feet. 350 knots. And we're going to be able to see.
Colt 1, Lozani, check landing gear, runway 13.
And we are going to verify that the deck is clear. Right. Deck is indeed clear. Past the bow. Alright. Throttle's idle.
Colt 1, go around, runway
3 Gs to start. .250 knots will bring the landing gear out. Flaps
You're
down.
a little left of the optimal downwind trajectory. Adjust to the right until you're about a mile from the runway. Looking good. You're within the downwind corridor, so focus on keeping the velocity vector on the horizon with pitch trim and bringing the E-bracket down to it with throttle. Try to stay around 600 feet AGL and maintain a heading of 310.
Alright. On speed. I'm going to switch to tack in here.
Okay, begin your turn toward the runway when you're ready.
Yep.
Remember to add power and wait at least 90 degrees before looking at the runway.
Alright. Got a little high there. Alright. Starting the left turn. Adding some power. And turning. A little heavy, so that's going to keep us slightly fast. In the turn, looking mostly good.
Start visually lining up with the runway and get the velocity vector and E-bracket on the numbers. Remember that you have to keep that throttle moving to stay ahead of the aircraft.
Overshot. Final. Correcting. I'll go around if necessary.
Colt 1, Lozani, check landing gear, runway 13.
Yeah, go around. This is ridiculous. Now you're up. Flaps up. Go to 800 feet before I start my brake again. The way he sequenced those messages didn't confuse me, but it distracted me. Let me give it one more try. Alright, increasing speed here. Alright, in the brake.
At this point, you should have been at 800 feet and far enough to the right of the runway to look down and verify that it isn't fouled. It's a little difficult. You should be about halfway through your turn at this point. You're a little left of the optimal downwind
Landing her down,
trajectory.
flaps 15.
Adjust to the right,
Flaps
looking
full.
good. You're within the downwind corridor, so focus on keeping the velocity vector on the horizon with pitch trim and bringing the E-bracket down to it with throttle. Try to stay around 600 feet AGL and maintain a heading of 310.
Alright. Looking good on the horizon. Okay. Now we need to descend to 600 feet as we come abeam the ship. I just did that by bringing power out, bringing it back in. Alright.
Okay, begin your turn toward the runway when you're ready.
I will.
Remember to add power and wait at least 90 degrees before looking at the runway.
Got it. Alright. There we go. Starting left turn, adding some power. There's about a 23-degree bank. Degrees, that's going to be about 220. Okay, looking good for the most part. Looking good.
Start visually lining up with the runway and get the velocity vector and E-bracket on the numbers.
Okay, this
Remember
is looking
that you
good.
have to keep that throttle moving to stay ahead of the aircraft.
Overshot maybe just a hair this time. It's looking much better. Yep, just a hair. Looking good. Reducing power. A little low, just based on the fact that it's not a moving carrier. Alright, putting it right on the numbers. He says constantly move the throttle, but only move it when you need to. Don't just move it for the sake of moving it. I'm putting right on those numbers. And full power.
Good trap.
Alright, now
Exit the
reduce
runway when
powered
able.
idle. Speed brakes out. Coming on the brakes. Alright, pulling the stick back for aerodynamic braking. Flaps up. Speed brake retract. And we will exit the runway as necessary. I see some rubber up on the runway, so it's probably going to be a good stopping point here. Alright. Flight controls are relaxed. Alright, very good, very good. And I believe the tutorial message said parking spot 1, so we will get off the runway here, slowing down just a little bit more. Alright, here's that left turn. Clearing off.
Head back to parking spot 1 and shut down the aircraft.
Alright, parking spot 1 down there at the bend. Alright. Alright, so right about here. Nose wheel steering high. And brakes. Alright. Parking brake set. Our trim. Flaps full. I don't agree with how he's doing this right here. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my shutdown.
Alright, let's go
off.
get some dinner and then we have a night flight to complete.
Very good. Alright, overall, thought it was a good lesson. Could use a little bit of tweaking in terms of the breaking up some of the dialogue, but I fully understand how hard that is to implement. Well, if you enjoyed this video and want to see future videos, please like and subscribe. Hit that bell button. And as always, thanks for watching.